All right, welcome to our SIG Auth bi-weekly meeting of June 27th, 2018. Couple things on the announcements. Short agenda today. I think a lot of folks are focused on 111 still. So the big item for this week is we've announced that we would like Mike Denise to be the new SIG Auth chair. Mike has been a long-time, very active participant in the SIG Auth community, and we're happy with his nomination and think he'll do a great job in the role. If anyone has any additional thoughts on that or concerns, please raise them ASAP. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and submit that PR and make that official.
The feedback we've gotten has been positive so far, which is not surprising. So.
Yeah, thanks everyone and Eric. Happy to help out.
Yeah, thanks for being willing to step up to that role.
I put the next item on the announcements. We're going to be changing how we set up the Zoom meetings to make it an actual scheduled meeting, which gives us some additional capabilities. So the Zoom meeting link will be changing, and we'll update the calendar and the link here. But we plan to do that in time for our next meeting. So we'll send out a reminder. Anyway, I think one of the differences is that you will need to have a Zoom account to join the meeting. So I'm not sure if you actually have to have that today or if you can join anonymously, but I think that will be one of the differences with the scheduled meeting. So just to make people aware of that, if you need to set that up prior to the next meeting.
Wait, Mike, I think you put the next item on here.
Yeah, this is something that we omitted from the original token request proposal. So I just wanted to make people aware that I'm reintroducing a small change to the token request proposal. So it was originally omitted just so that we could expedite the merge of that original proposal. Now that it's in, I think it would be interesting to revisit. So this is just an announcement. And hopefully we can get some eyes on it, maybe talk about it next meeting.
And that's the proposal PR too. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I put the next item on here. So this came up when I was looking into ways that I noticed that we're allowing basically anything to be sent in a self-subject access review, and started some conversations around whether we should be doing any validation on that to kind of just at least limit the size of those to sane links. When I was poking around, it seemed like every resource had a 250 character limit on the names, including custom resources. But Jordan, I think you said that there were some that were not limited.
Yeah, that's not a universal limit. So, yeah, there are a few dimensions here. One is like what our authorizer actually uses. So when you hit the API server, a URL on the API, it translates that into attributes and then asks the authorizer about those attributes. And so if we want to start putting limits in place that we didn't previously have, we need to figure out what the behavior is if you hit a URL that exceeds those limits. And then there's kind of the API, the subject access review, self-subject access review APIs. And again, those don't have limits today. And for kind of each step, or each place we use those, we need to define what it would mean if you exceed those limits. So the API server calling out to a webhook, or someone actually submitting one of these reviews to the API server. And then the final reason, which I think is why you hit this, Tim, was like the places where we do remote authorization, we have caching layers. And that's why this was actually really concerning at all, I guess, was because you could fill the cache with large amounts of garbage. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think there's other ways that we can fix the cache problem. And I was sort of wondering if we want to just have some kind of sanity checks on these things at all. I guess it's a backwards incompatible kind of breaking change. Although I would be surprised if anyone is legitimately doing subject access reviews for, resources that are 100,000 characters in length.
Yeah, not 100,000, but I could see longer than 253. So, I mean,
yeah, for sure.
If you have a structured name, which is like an encoded form of something, you could pretty easily exceed 250 characters.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of like, an 8K limit seems like a pretty generous amount that would basically make any of the, kind of caching or performance issues go away.
Yeah, the kinds of things, because the names do show up in URLs, the kinds of limits where if you were exceeding those, you would be running into problems with proxies and URL libraries and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Seems like a more reasonable limit than 253, more like an abuse limit.
Yeah, I agree.
So anecdotally, I've run into this with people misusing kube control, trying to add weird things like commas in between names. Kube control ends up forwarding or trying to delete a very, very long name with a bunch of commas in it. So people do kind of do this in scripts accidentally. And I've seen some very large requests that hit our authorizer in GKE.
Yeah. I mean, commas in names are not unheard of, depending on what your name represents. So,
well, so in this case, they end up being like every single pod for a 2000 replica set, commas, comma delimited. So that's kind of the misuse, accidental misuse, or that I've seen. I have not encountered abuse.
Yeah.
I guess the sort of the more fundamental question and why I wanted to put this on the agenda is subject access reviews and kind of like the RBAC system could be used to like answer authorization queries for things that have nothing to do with Kubernetes. Like you can put arbitrary like non-resource rules in there, and then check those with an external system that submits reviews. And sort of wondering if that's a use case that we want to support.
I mean, resource and sub-resource are pretty generic, and especially with the extension mechanisms we have. I mean, who's to say what is or is not a resource, right? Like if you can surface CRUD on it and represent it in an extension API server, I think if it's addressable, it could be legitimately called a resource. And so that the restrictions, like the minimal name restrictions we have, are basically to make sure that it's addressable in a URL. So you're not allowed to have a slash or a % or a name which is exactly dot or dot dot. And so that is really worrying about addressability, and that's it. So. I mean, if we cap it at something very large to prevent abuse, I probably wouldn't get more opinionated at this layer than that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, maybe I'll open an issue to kind of follow up on the discussion of, a really high abuse limit on those.
Yeah.
And then we can address some of the cache issues separately or through that as well. So I think that's everything that's on the agenda. Does anyone have anything to add? Or
I know last time we said we were going to talk through 112 stuff this week, but I think we were overly optimistic about how little 111 work we would be doing over the past 2 weeks. I know I didn't have a chance to turn towards 112 stuff, but I would encourage people to do that now. Now that 111 is releasing today, tomorrow, the 112 release goes fast. So let's try to get tracking issues and designs and discussions around those designs going, and actionable stuff wrapped up in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, so we can not be doing last minute implementations. I know Mike had stuff he was working on. Patrick has the audit proposal, and then I'm looking at some of the node restriction stuff as well. So let's get visibility on those things early in the release if we can.
yeah, definitely. Sounds good. All right, anything else? Awesome. Well, enjoy your extra 45 minutes of your day, everyone, and talk to you in 2 weeks.